West Hill United is a progressive spiritual community where how you live is more important than what you believe. West Hill United is a people, a place, an idea. We are a community living out of a progressive faith, striving to make a positive difference in our own lives, the lives of others, and the world. Join us Sundays at 10:30 a.m. or connect with us at any time.
That's helpful. At the end of the readings, we customarily add the phrase, offered as wisdom for the journey, and we invite you to respond with the phrase, may we walk in its light. This is simply an invitation to participate if you wish to do so. The first reading from the Gospel of Rabbi Brian, chapter 1. Word came to Rabbi Brian in Portland, Oregon, saying, proclaim unto the people, the heart of religion is to practice love and kindness. And while you're at it, ask them to stop being jerks and maybe suggest that they calm down a bit and accept their finitude. But, disembodied voice, the oversized, crocheted, yarmulke-wearing, slim, 5'11" bearded individual responded, I don't rabbi like that anymore. I dropped out of organized religion. I teach math in high schools. Perfect, said the voice, as it then continues. Take all you've learned and write an honest, narrative-driven, big idea book and tour around preaching compassion, religious self-empowered freedom, and love for all people, no matter their religion or spiritual leaning. And try to enjoy yourself and make the book fun. Reading 2 from the Gospel of Rabbi Brian, chapter 2. Imagine you are in a fantastic cosmic music academy, a beautiful, large room filled with the shiniest, most beautiful French horns. And imagine I, Rabbi Brian, am the instructor. I explain to you and all the others there how to hold the French horn, the most difficult to master brass instrument. After I've walked you through the positioning, what would you imagine you and everyone else would want to do next? Blow! Make a sound, of course. Of course you want to give it a try. And that enthusiastically, I tell you, go for it. And you do. Everyone tries. And it sounds horrible. I imagine we would all laugh hearing that our collective competence is far from the magical marching band of the Music Man. Do you imagine I would shame you or anyone for not being able to play as well as I can after my 4 years of practice? I wouldn't, and I don't. Let me ask you a question, beloved. With any task at which you are not at level 5, near perfect, is shame warranted in the lack of your perfection? Let me answer. No. Beloved friend, in case you aren't at level 5, near perfect, at loving kindness, loving yourself and others, I'd like to help teach you. That's what this book, Rabbi Brian's highly unorthodox gospel, is for. Offered as wisdom for the journey.
May we walk in its light.
Rabbi Brian Zachary Mayer, sometimes known as RB, doesn't rabbi normally. He left synagogue, mainstream Judaism, to teach math in inner city high school. He now runs rotb.org, a worldwide internet congregation of over 3,000 members. He enjoys constructing small bios, making stained glass lamps, and gaining mastery on the French horn. He lives in Portland, Oregon, has a recently published gospel, and is thinking a lot about pronouns these days. We might be able to help you out with that one. Rabbi Brian is psyched to be preaching at West Hill. He is a friend of Gretta's. Here is what she wrote. Rabbi Brian has nurtured an extraordinary talent that many never discover and the rest rarely develop. It is the art of learning from the gifts and traumas, the petty annoyances, and heroic achievements that lie down with us at the end of every single day. His unorthodox gospel entrusts its readers with wisdom hard-earned, complexities wrestled into clarity, and lightheartedness of every hue. He reminds us of the truths ever lingering in the spaces between us that discovered might make us whole, not only as individuals, but as the human family. We are delighted to have Brian with us to share his perspectives today.
Good morning. Okay. Okay, good morning. And good morning, people on Zoom. I'm going to be reading from this, Rabbi Brian's highly unorthodox gospel. This is from chapter 2, part 1. In the beginning, love saw. If in the 1990s you were seated next to me on a flight, you might see me do a variety of one-handed cuts and flourishes, a desperate cry for attention at 40,000 feet. Were you to comment on my dexterity with a pack of playing cards, my hope, I would gladly show you a solid hour of magic tricks. I've since learned that most people have an appetite for only 3 tricks. And sometime after the age of 40, I learned that I had something far more valuable to share, and it was what was hiding behind the cards, me. In graduate school for education, I learned that classroom management technique of handing out stickers as an extrinsic motivation. A sticker economy is mainly targeted at classrooms filled with those 10 and under. But me, not afraid of experimenting and failing, I give my high school students better wired for abstraction, and I think they will enjoy smiley face stickers in the color of their choice from me, their rabbi turned math teacher. So I carry smiley face stickers around with me and give one away when I like something I see. Luis, you get a sticker for interrupting and asking me to explain. Nicole, you get a sticker for helping Matt, and Matt, you get a sticker for asking for help. Taryn, you are on time and in your seat ready to go for the first time this week. It's sticker time. What color do you want? Some put stickers on the cover of their binders to brag among themselves. They love it. High school students just want love to be seen, just as much as 10-year-olds do. They're just not good at asking for the validation. And what about you? You are an adult, and adults are the same as high school students and 10-year-olds. We all want, as adults, to be seen for who we are. We just, for the most part, stink at asking for hugs, or love, or stickers. I'd like to suggest that we re-examine this default position. Can't we ask for love? Can't you be the most effusive, most loving person of all the people you know? And what do you have to lose? I'm going to skip ahead. Chapter 2, part 5, thou shalt be thy own authority. Perhaps, and I say perhaps only to soften the message, an external deity isn't the true authority of your spiritual religious life. And perhaps, and again just saying perhaps to soften the idea, no person outside of yourself is the best authority on your spiritual religious life. Perhaps it's you. Well, forget about perhaps. Of course it's you. You are the true authority of your spiritual religious life. If someone asks you to read this book, a parent, a clergy person, a friend, a spouse, and you don't want to be reading it, please tell them, Rabbi Brian wrote right here, it's all right for me not to read this book. And seriously, if this book is not working for you, put it down. The freedom for you to make your own decisions is super important. Of course, I want you to continue to read this. Please do. I labored hard for this book to come into fruition. But let me point out again, you are the foremost authority of your spiritual religious life. Amen. Los Angeles, 1995. Third year of rabbinical school. There's a note in my school mailbox which I check obsessively. Later, when cell phones will come about, I'll check those obsessively too. Dean Bicel would like to see you immediately, is written on the note. I recognize the handwriting. It's Marcy, his adorable secretary. I guess when you're summons, you summons. I guess when you're summoned, you summons. I say Seinfeld-like when I arrive, and Marcy chuckles. The inner office door opens. The tall dean in blue blazer says, "Come in, Brian. Thank you for coming." Of course, I was summoned. I sit. Brian, he starts signaling his exasperation. The meeting concerns an introduction to Judaism class I'm teaching in one of LA's 2 gay synagogues. It turns out the dean heard that I taught my class that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob probably weren't father, son, and grandson, as presented in the Bible. I had explained to the class, these are just stories possibly from different tribes explaining how they came to be one larger, more inclusive group. Brian, the dean says, you have to be careful with whom you share the truth. I realize I'm living in a very small Jewish fishbowl where someone in a class complains to their rabbi that the student teacher questioned the reality of the stories in the Bible, and that's a big enough deal for the rabbi to call the dean to then castigate me. We chat a little until it's time for me to leave. Thank you for taking this in good spirits, Brian. I certainly hoped that you would. Well, I thank you for the admonition, I say, smiling. Summon me any time. He laughs politely. Later in life, I'll reevaluate my instinctual desire to fawn, to please authority. Hey, I say casually on my way out the door, might you recommend a therapist? I have some things I feel like I need to work out. I think but do not say, like how I'm supposed to teach what I know to be true. I apologize, how I'm not supposed to teach what I know to be true. Section 211, Getting Out of the Cave. Pasadena, California, 2010. I stand in front of the classroom. It's a summer session of Pasadena High School. Dr. Robert Farrar, my history of education teacher at Pepperdine, has asked me to come and speak. A diverse group of teens sits before me. Regina, I point to a spunky 15-year-old. Would you mind bringing yourself up here with the chair and face the wall that in front we're all facing? As she does, I rearrange the classroom's metal overhead projector with its bright beam of light to throw her shadow onto the wall. Allegory of Plato's Caves, I announce. A spontaneous improvised telling starring Regina. You guys are all going to play the part of Regina in a moment. She laughs, and slowly for the laugh she asks, Mister, am I doing it right? Perfect, I say. Here's the allegory, a fancy word for parable. Regina is born and lives her whole life living in that chair in a cave in front of a wall in front of her and a fire that she cannot see behind her. I pause, look around the room to measure and add to the group's engagement. Do not, I say louder than necessary, ask reasonable questions like, why is she in the cave? How did she get there? Or how does she eat or poop? Again, comically loud, this is an allegory. And in allegories, we do not ask such ridiculous or logical questions. I quietly negotiate with the student in the front of the room to borrow a pen, and I hold it between the light and Regina's head, moving the stick back and forth on the wall. Regina sees the shadows of people, in this case named Bick. I was going to go with that or Sharpie. She sees the shadows of the people as they walk between her and the fire. In a ridiculous falsetto, dancing the pen around, I say, hello, Regina. Regina, how are you? Regina doesn't know how to respond. So channeling myself from my high school years when I performed as a magician at kids' birthday parties, I up the energy and say, Regina, hello, girlfriend, how are you doing today? The students laugh, but not nearly as uproariously as when Regina comes back. Yes, Bick, yes, girl, I hear you. I'm sorry, I was just thinking about the last time I ate. I continue in my regular register. Regina routinely has conversations with Bick, and to her, the shadows are reality. To her, this is normal. She ain't, though, comes a shout from the back of the classroom. High-spirited, I extend my hand to Regina as a prince might. She reaches for my hand, and I continue. Then one day, magically, she's brought out of the cave, and for the first time, she sees the sun in the sky, and she says, "This is your part now. You've lived your entire lives in a cave. You've never seen the sun. You've only seen shadows on the wall. Somehow you get taken out and you get to see the sun. What do you say?" Awesome. Oh my God. Oh my God, and WTF indeed. If you lived your whole life outside in a cave and you see the sun, suddenly you might be confused. You're doing a smashing job, Regina, I say to encourage her. Smashing, just as Plato wrote it, but better. And I have a question. Now that you're outside, seeing the sun for the first time, where do you want to be more than anywhere else? Back in the cave, where it's comfortable, where things made sense. But what's the problem with that, I ask? No, I ask, seriously. What's the problem? You've seen the sun for the first time. You want to be back in the cave. What's the problem with going back in the cave? You know there's the sun. You know better. So what do? Which do you choose? Do you choose to go back in the cave? Or do you choose to show of hands, how many want to be back in the cave? That's no hands, 2 hands, 3 hands. I'd want to be back in the cave. And how many of you are going to brave reality? Most of the other hands. Hi, Zoom people. I can't see the Zoom people. I'm kind of just making that up. That's just all of you again. So what do? You tough it out, meaning what? You wait until the sun is no longer so scary. Perfectly, exactly what Plato said, I say to Regina. Thank you. We'll continue in part 3 in the book of Malarkey. Part 1, unlearning both learnings. Some of what you know about religion, the Bible, and God is right, and some probably isn't. And for me too. I probably know a bit more than most people about religion, God, and the Bible. They are kind of my long suit. My BFF, Larry, a retired minister, says, there's nothing wrong with having a 4th grade understanding of religion, as so long as you're in the 4th grade. Let me jump in with an example, the 10 Commandments. I'd like you to pick one. After the Bible introduces the 10 Commandments, which is the next line? Is it A, I am Adonai, your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of bondage? Or is it B, you shall have no other gods before me? Don't vote. It's a trick question. Neither is right. Neither, at least according to the Bible, is the first on the top 10 lists of 10 Commandments. What you and what most commonly people think of as the 10 Commandments aren't, according to the Bible, the 10 Commandments. Whoa. The Bible itself uses the phrase the 10 Commandments one time and one time only. And it's neither in Exodus 20 or Deuteronomy 5 where we usually find the 10 Commandments. Those are not called the 10 Commandments in the Bible. The phrase the 10 Commandments is only found in Exodus 34:28, after which the text records as 10 statements from God that Moses is to write down on tablets. And the first of them is Exodus 35:2. For 6 days work, but on the 7th day have a holy day of Sabbath for God. How many of you knew that was the actual first of the 10 Commandments as written? It's amazing how often we've seen that book and we've missed that completely. It's not what we were expecting. The important thing, is this an important thing in the history of the world? No. But it makes me think that you got the idea. Caught and taught. Besides what you've learned about the Bible, what you were taught about the Bible, religion, and God. There's a lot you just picked up about the Bible, religion, and God that isn't right either. Stick with me. Some things are learned without words. They are caught, not taught. Like we all know how to turn in an elevator, face the doors. Nobody taught. Did anyone's grandfather tell them that's what to do on an elevator? Of course not. We just know to do it. No one tells us. You just picked it up. Caught beliefs tend to be harder to unlearn than taught beliefs. People see taught things as separate from themselves and caught things as part of themselves, like the aforementioned 10 Commandments. You know at some point you were taught that. Finding out that what you learned was wrong isn't that rough for most people because it falls in the category of taught. Now, unlearning caught, on the other hand, is harder. I can't read. I crossed this part off and rewrote it. Excuse me for 1 second. Unlearning, let me just improvise this. I wrote it, I should know what it says. Things that we have caught, like the idea that we are separate from God, is harder to unlearn because we weren't taught it. It's something we simply caught. We caught an idea that you and God are not one in the same. And maybe, just maybe, much of what we caught about religion is wrong. 2 notes about this book while we are going. 1, in the hardcover edition, not in the paperback, it comes with stickers and interactive exercises to do where you can reward yourself with stickers. 2nd note about the book. Discussion about God is intentionally reserved for chapter 6. We are right now in chapter 3, part 6, not an original sin. Original sin is a human construct, far darker than making an error or feeling guilty. The premise of original sin, that you are and have been wrong from conception, is fucked up. It's insidious. The idea of original sin leads to shame, thinking there is something wrong with your very character. And that is a horrible shame. You were brought to believe that your thoughts and you could be impure. Shame on them for telling you that. I can't even imagine. There was no fall, no original sin, no ancestral sin. Actions purported to have been done by Adam and Eve do not implicate your life. Let's look at the text, look at the Bible. The idea of original sin was birthed into the world by Augustine of Hippo, not God. The sinner for all time construct is a 4th century man's gloss on Genesis 3. His thoughts became very popular. After all, it explains why seemingly bad things happen, but that doesn't mean that he's right. The Bible never once refers to original sin. Well, that's not actually true. There are 2 extra-canonical books that make mention of original sin, but they only do so to explain that sin is not inherited. Moreover, the word translated into English as sin isn't even used in the Bible until after the expulsion from the Garden of Eden. Sin debuts with Cain being told, regarding his jealousy of his brother Abel, that sin crouches at your door and desires to have you, but you must master it. Childbirth will be painful and hard work, yes. Original sin? No. If you want to believe humanity is broken and deserving of misery, believe it because you choose to believe it, not because someone told you it's in the Bible. Biblical sin in my toddler. Adam and Eve did not disobey God. This idea might be hard to swallow if you grew up believing otherwise, especially if you're brought up Catholic and other types of fundamentalists. Nonetheless, and no matter what you were previously told to think, neither Adam nor Eve disobeyed God. Now stick with me. Adam and Eve could not have disobeyed God because they didn't know better. Let me explain. I didn't punish my son when he was a toddler when he crawled up to a table and tugged on a tablecloth in an attempt to pull himself up to stand. My cries of "don't stop" didn't make any sense to him. Why? Because all the other times he had pulled himself up on a chair or the edge of the bed to stand, I had been proud. Was he being disobedient, not listening to me shouting "stop"? No, he just didn't understand. I rushed to save him from the crystal bowl that could have hit him on the head or smashed on the ground, and I got there in time. But we didn't punish Emmett. He wasn't wrong in his actions. He was just trying to pull himself up. Adam and Eve did not know not to listen to the serpent. How could they know the serpent was lying? They didn't know the difference between good and evil. They didn't have that knowledge. They weren't disobedient. Nothing shameful for all time. It's innocence, a lack of understanding. Except the pinning of the blame on women for birthing evil into the world. That shit's not innocent. That's just plain wrong. A sales job. Augie, may I call you that, Augustine of Hippo? Let me ask you a question. Is Jesus' craftsmanship shoddy? Why do I ask? Well, if the self-sacrifice of Jesus was penance for our apparent sinfulness, if Jesus paid the ultimate price to free us from sin, why are people still full of original sin? And let me answer, they're not. I heard a missionary, while being interviewed on NPR, say that the key to selling Jesus' salvation is first to arouse deep need for it. That the way to sell the cure of Jesus dying for your sins is to first go about convincing people they are sinners. Oh, Jesus. I can't imagine the exhaustion and terror of trying to free oneself from the internalized message of I am a sinner. Religion is about becoming, transformation, changing, growing. Free yourself from any voice that tells you you are inherently bad or wrong. Find a therapist or a team of therapists. I occasionally hear, I'm so sorry, Rabbi Brian, you're so kind and seemingly good, but you are a sinner unless you really accept Jesus Christ into your heart as Lord and Savior. What I think, if you're going to tie your theology to a correct set of answers to binary questions, you probably want to take a deeper look at what's driving your desire for such simplicity. Do you really believe the infinite would pick teams and be petty? What I say, you have chosen to believe that, and you can choose otherwise. As simple as it sounds, it's true. You can choose to believe whether or not you were born into sin. And what is sin anyhow? My favorite definition comes from Father James Keenan's Society of Jesus. Sin is a failure to bother to love. That's all. Sin is a failure to bother to love. How are we doing right this moment? Give me a show of hands. You all right? Okay. It's a little one-way, this reading a book thing. It's good to know that you're with me. Thank you. Section 5, the Book of Love. Section 4 is called the relatively very short Book of Hate. So we're skipping to chapter 5, the birthright of love. Fred Rogers told me that he liked me just as I am, and I believed him. He sang about it, about him liking me exactly and precisely without doubt or question, just as I am. Why would he lie? I saw a meme. It said, I love you. You're probably thinking, but you don't even know me. But if people can hate for no reason, I can love for no reason too. It's an odd idea for people to take in, that we're loved and deserve to be loved just as we are. Beloved, we are deserving of love, not because we earn it, but because we are, because we exist, because it is our birthright, being beloved. While it would have been nice if we all started out with unconditional positive regard in our childhood, almost all of us learned that love is conditional. In the words of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, I think the tragedy of our achievement-oriented society that we tell children 1,000 times, I love you if you bring good grades home. I love you if you make it through high school. God, I would love you if you would one day, if I could say, my son, the doctor. Love doesn't need to be like that. New York City, 1985. I'm 15 years old. The last class period of high school day is over. I'm looking to hang out with someone before I go home. I like being with people. It helps me feel seen, loved, real. I sweep the 6th floor library. None of my friends are there. I exit to the stairwell and count each of the 42 steps up to the 8th floor where the music and art departments are and meander into the art room. Sometimes I do homework there with friends or just goof around thinking about doing homework. "Can I help you?" asks an attentive woman I do not know in a green canvas smock. "Nah, just wandering, possibly meandering," I say, an intellectual overachiever. She beams, "Would you like to try the still life the 4th grade class was just painting?" Maybe it's easier for children to believe that someone loves them just as they are, because they're closer to that age when babies ideally get love for just being. Adults are a bit more skeptical about the message of love. Many adults, maybe even you, believe, if you really got to know me, you wouldn't still love me. I can tell you from statistical probability that's not true, because everyone I have gotten to know, the more that I have gotten to know them, the more I have loved them. The green smocked lady brings me over to a tableau of shoes on a table and pulls out a chair, inviting me to sit. She tells me she's a sub for the lower schoolers and asks, "Wouldn't you like to try your hand at a watercolor this afternoon?" Spellbound, I put my backpack down and start a pencil outline on a half sheet of watercolor paper. What if we all allowed love in? What if we stopped repeating and believing terrible things we tell ourselves? What if we loved ourselves as we might have been loved as children, lovable exactly as we are? Let's use our giant intellects and hearts of loving kindness to get more love in the world. "I love it," the green smocked lady says a few minutes later. "You're kidding." "No, the colors, the abstraction, it's really quite good." I look at it. It looks like nothing like the reality I see. She's probably one of those happy with everything life kind of people. Or she's comparing my work to that of the little kid she worked with all day. Unless, perhaps, could it be? Yes, maybe what I did was wonderful. Maybe I am deserving of love. When I am asked why I stopped teaching high school students, I explain, I found a population even more desperate than teenagers for my cajoling them into learning and knowing they are loved. Adults. You. While you might not believe me, insert your name here, you are loved. And that's okay, you can deny it. But Mr. Rogers and I know it's true. You are beloved exactly as you are. Of course, you might harbor some doubts. You might still believe it is possible that out of all the people who have existed, you are an exception. You might think that you do not deserve love. But that's not true. It's simply not true. Do you hear a voice telling you, you are the exception? You, the person hearing these words at this moment, you do not deserve love? That happens. I've seen it. A wrinkle in the system that makes it take longer for some people to believe than others. Stay patient. Doesn't happen all at once, not for most people. Be gentle with yourself. Keep reading. I got you. We got this. It's like learning the French horn. It will probably take a little while. But you are worthy of love. The question is, are you willing to lean in to that love? The next piece that I wanted to read is from chapter 7. But I don't want to read that yet, because I want to teach you something that I teach in the book, but I teach it so much better in person live, and as we are here in person live, I'm going to transition into teaching you in person live. I'm going to take the microphone with me. I'm going to teach you the 4 letters. S, A, U, R. Can everyone say that? S-A-U-R. It sounds like soar. I think of a giant lovosaur dinosaur. That's how I remember it. The letters are S-A-U-R. Very good. This is what love is. This is the work of Dr. Logan Fox. He said love has 4 components to it. The first starts with a It's seeing. You can't love someone if you don't see them. We probably all remember being on the wrong side of the silent treatment. Someone pretending you're not there. Nothing less loving than pretending someone's not there. Loving is to see people, to see them for who they are. When I get coffee and the barista has bright orange hair, I say, "Oh, look, you have bright orange hair." Well, they know they have bright orange hair. Of course they do. That's why they made their hair bright orange. But I say, "Oh, look, you have bright orange hair," because I want to make sure that I do this S word. This S word is seeing. The next letter is A. A is accepting. Seeing, accepting. I accept you as you are. I take you with your orange hair as you are. See, understand. Seeing, accepting. Understanding is saying, I might not have chosen the choices you made, but I understand why you did. It's empathy, it's compassion. Love has so far 3 out of 4 qualities. The first of the qualities of love is then, and finally responding. Love is no good unless there's an action associated to it. You can think of the 5 love languages, to which I want to add food as another love language. I want some of that peach crisp you all were talking about. Love is made out of 4 things. It's made out of and responding. Now here's where this is going to level up a second. We can do this with other people. Do we see them? Do we accept them? And we can do it with ourselves as well. Do you see yourself for who you really are? Do you accept yourself as you really are? Or do you keep telling yourself you need to be better? You need to be different? Can you do that for yourself? Can you understand that you are who you are? And then finally, the last of them, are you able to do that as well? That's love. Okay, back to the microphone up here. I'm going to finish with a quick narrative part. From the book of Practices. Practice loving your apparent enemy. Salem, Oregon, 2017. Emmett is 11, Annie is 9. We're in Salem, Oregon's capital, for a women's march. Jane and I joke that the kids are learning their local geography from attending protests. Along with the hundreds of other protesters in front of the state capitol building, which looks like a cross between the White House and a Mormon church, there's a man standing on the left corner of the street, a PA system, preaching that we're all sinners. On the right corner, there's a man waving a Nazi flag. Inspired by the Daryl Davis documentary, Accidental Courtesy, I have a compulsion to walk over to one of them. Before I decide, I see someone approach the man with the flag and shove him. He falters. I silently root for him not to fall. He stays up. I have mixed feelings about it, but I know my priority. Violence is never the solution. I cross the street to address the fire and brimstone megaphone evangelist, and I giggle to myself for a moment. I've just had the choice between the lesser of 2 evils. I don't know what I'm going to say until I hear his amplified, slightly tinny voice say, "There's not even a preacher here besides me." That's my entrance. "Brother," I say, "you're not the only preacher here." He moves the microphone away from his mouth so he and I can talk. I say, amazed that the right words seemingly come from my mouth, "It must be really scary to be where you are right now." He looks at me with hesitation, his eyes, and he says, "It's scary. This is not what I like doing, but it's what I need to be doing." We exchange names and a handshake. "Can I help?" I ask, earnestly, not certain what I am even offering. He says, "Would you pray with me?" I would be glad to. What comes to mind is a very calm, slow, grounding prayer of peace, O say shalom, the final lines of a 13th century Aramaic prayer with the origins in the book of Job, chapter 25. It's beautiful, almost haunting, but I think the better of leading with Hebrew and stammer, "I come from a slightly different tradition than yours." "Not a problem, we're both Christians," he says. "Well, I'm Christian enough." It gets awkward for a moment. He hesitates and asks skeptically, "Do you believe that Jesus Christ is the only true God?" I hate the binary. I say and continue with William Blake's retort when he was asked the same. Jesus is the only true God, and so am I, and so are you. Wrong answer. Jason turns from me and flips the microphone back down. "We are not gods," his megaphone intones. "We are not gods," he says again and again. "We are not gods." "Brother," I say, "I'd sure like to pray with you." "You are not my brother." Jason, you might want to check your Bible, but I'm pretty sure I am." He turns his back from me and turns back to shouting about the wages of sin. I go back to my side of the street, to my family. After about 15 minutes, I hear a man, unamplified, shouting at Jason vehemently. I can't stand by and witness this abuse. As Jesus, to whom Jason is devoted, says in Matthew 5:45, "There is no righteousness in loving those we love. Even the hypocrites do this." Before I'm able to get to him, a red-faced screaming woman adds her voice to the man shouting. I make my way between the two shouters and Jason and call for a few folks around him to help. "Let's make a love circle around Jason." I put my arms out to demonstrate. 4 of the 5 of us hold hands around Jason, and we form a barrier to keep him away from those shouting. It is holy. Outnumbered and outclassed, the shouters, people on my side politically, disperse. Sometime after I've returned to my family, I look up to see Jason walking off with police officers on either side of him. Oh no, I catch up and as he and the cops part ways, I say, "Jason, I hope you're not feeling like you were thrown out of here." "No," he says, and our eyes meet. I see for a moment his beautiful soul. I imagine him as a little child being abused and thinking abuse means love. I figure, why else would someone put themselves to be abused if not to reenact some childhood trauma? We walk at the same pace in the silence until he says, "I don't even like doing this. I'm a shy man." He tells me he's glad we met and how I can find him on the internet if I look up YouTube for Oregon Jesus Preacher. Later, I'll look him up and see accounts of many others' protests, including some where he's been knocked unconscious by people on my side. I leave a comment on his YouTube channel. "Brother Jason, it was beautiful to get to meet you in Salem. It was a highlight of my trip." He hearts my comment and writes, "I looked at what you put up on the web, and I think you have some interesting ideas." Later, and it hurts my heart to see, he takes our exchange down. There's more in the book, but that's all I'm going to read to you. I do have a few books here for people who would like to purchase them afterwards. I think we said we were going to take questions.
Yes, we were.
Are you moderating that for us? Or am I just taking questions? I've never done this today before.
There is a church beside my workplace, and on the sign in the heat of the summer it said, "It is too hot to change the sign. You are loved. Details inside." And I just want to say thank you for bringing the details of love inside in the hall and on the Zoom to us today. And before we have any further conversation with you, John, if I could ask you to pass those out, maybe even get Ann, could you pass the other plate out just to that side of the room? I wanted to bring to Brian's experience of us, something that we do in an altered form on our longest night services. And I gave him a little bit of background that Gretta had the idea of being the light in the world represented by a candle wick bracelet. Some of you may have had them. I'm going to ask for this. There's your Zoom folks there. Did you bring a candle or there you see some wrists? You put some wrists up there with the candle wick bracelets. How lovely. And we're going to do the song we sing on the longest night, and it's going to go this way. Babette's going to hum a verse of it, and while she is humming, Donna is going to do with Brian what it would have happened on that day, is give him a candlelight bracelet, and if you recall being part of this, she will say to him what is so true: you are light in the world. Sometimes we just give that, but I would like you to be part of this, which is beautiful. So you're going to be sort of standing here semi-awkwardly for a moment.
I'm good at that.
I'm just good at that. And so you are being given a candle. If you could turn it on, it's a little tricky turning it on, so if you need some help with the push there. And I mentioned to Brian that the song is usually sung in the dark on our longest night, so we can't give you the dark right now. We're not in the cave, but we are in the dark, in the cave. And then on the last verse, we're singing about all of us being light in the world. On the last verse, Donna, long ago, prompted me to drop it down for the last verse as opposed to going up, which I thank her for, because that's when our lights are dimming and when our strength is gone. And typically at that point in the singing of that song, the next line is, we'll extend our candles. And at that point, everyone in the room does that with our candles, which are live at the time. And then we sing together, you are light in the world. So I'm asking the Zoom crowd to stay on the screen with us, and we will sing this song. And I'm hoping it goes just as I planned. But if it doesn't, that has happened at longest nights as well. So we'll do it together. And I just want to say how beautiful it is to be able to do this together with all the folks farther away. So here we go.
Become a sustaining champion of West Hill United's work by committing to an automatic monthly donation. Learn more or donate now through Canada Helps.